Well, hello all, Game Methuselah. You know how I say in your gaming, if something goes wrong, it's always easiest to just use my motto, it's Jim Murphy's fault. Well, in this case, it was Jim Murphy's fault. As we're putting out our playtest, I thought, I've been playing this now for so long, so much of it seems intuitive to me because I've been playing it so long. And it never occurred to me that since the game was called Enlightened, we should really first and foremost talk about the Enlightenments. Well, there seemed to be some big confusion in that. Now, that's not uncommon. As we've been playtesting this with all kinds of new people, there's always sort of this glossed over eye look initially when we start playing the game because so much of this game is so different from every other RPG out there that often I just look at it and go, I think only the movement is pretty much common to this and most other games. Everything else, it's kind of counterintuitive, but once you understand it, it's very simple and it's very easy to do. So the one thing I've been getting the most questions about, and by the way, thank you very much for everyone who's downloaded it. Thanks again for the people who've made donations to both my Patreon and my Itch account. That's really nice. I appreciate it. And I think some people forget that it's not only the money, because it really isn't in this case. I mean, it's small amounts of money and it's not going to make a difference. I'm going to still produce this if nobody paid for it. But the point is, it's motivation. You know, it's like every time I lose a patron, even if they're only giving me $2, it's like heartbreaking. Not that there was any loss of money. It's just that, you know, it makes me feel validated that what I'm doing is actually sort of valuable to somebody. And now with the way tough things are and the way things were in the world, I always worry people like Mike Mordor and the Goblins of Mordor, a man who's trying to make his living painting miniatures. And he's doing a great job, but, you know, there's been a lot of challenges over the last few years, and I worry that he might not make it. Anyway, I'll likely cut this out so you won't hear it. But to the point, Enlightened, the name of the game. Now, the movement is different. I've explained that. The way the combat works with the multiple dice, I've explained that. But I think the biggest confusion always seems to come initially with the Enlightenments because people want to somehow feel confined, I think, on what they can do, and that's really not it. The idea of the Enlightenments is to make as interesting a character as you possibly can. I think the easiest way for me to start and how my Enlightenments work is talk to you about the characters I've been running. I like a game that has lots of opportunities for the players to have control over their characters, to have interesting things in their characters, and for their characters to be totally and completely unique in the game. You know, I was always mystified when 4th edition died because of all the D&Ds out there, I thought it was the most interesting because if you had a 5th level fighter and I had a 5th level fighter, it was very much likely that neither of those were going to even be at all the same because of all the various options you had. Now, admittedly, it was ponderous and there was lots of things involved because that's sort of the nature of the beast. That's what we're trying to avoid, getting to the point where you've got to be able to pour through book after book after book to figure out how a game works, where really the game play and the game running is going to be up to the players, the decisions and everything you can on an off season. And for those of you who don't remember in the off season, you may play as much as you want, as many adventures you want, accumulating all the points of progression, double 9 type things, everything else. But you accrue injuries that can't be healed by the fact that when you are healed, all the 1s, sometimes 2s and 3s, depending on how bad the healers are, go to the off season, that you do not recover them till you've taken a long rest because your injuries in this case are like been so severe that they're not going to heal up on their own. You're going to need to take time off and actually rest. If it's going to be a week, you wait a week, which we've done. You know, we'll take an off season, and the off season obviously is instantaneous. It just allows everybody then to collect their experience and to, if they have double 9s, to make one of them into a special ability, skill, feat, whatever you want to call it, that changes the dynamic of their character and how it plays. Now, you can also get different class packages, and class packages have abilities which in a lot of ways are like sort of lightweight Enlightenments. The Enlightenments are the ones that, because of what they are, we want the creativity of the players to come out. Again, like I said, I'm going to put out a bunch of basic ones, and it's really up to you and the game master. If the guy's running a game and he's willing to accept it and he's like, you can come up with something, perfect. I mean, we've been having multiple guys game mastery in our game, and then suddenly they're going to be playing with other people, and they come back in my group, and they're saying, I got this Enlightenment. I'm like, oh yeah, what does it do? And they're telling me, and I'm like, what? Um, that's a little bit too much. But it doesn't make any difference. If you have one game master in one group of 5 players, it doesn't matter. It's really up to the group to determine what is it we want to do. If we're playing a space game and we're running Jedi Knights and you get an Enlightenment with something, and you want it to be some ridiculous thing that is a Jedi power, perfect. Perfectly acceptable. But in the fantasy world we're doing now, with the way I'm starting out in the Twilight of Fae, it's ancient England, where the Fae reigned, and as their rule fails and falls, it's the rise of man. And so it's very primitive, like 300, 400 BC type of thing. So you're talking like Bronze Age type of situation. The original rules, and I think everybody should get them, which is the Ares Magazine 11 and Albion, which, by the way, you can go online, and somebody has put it up and printed it. You could read it. It's a good read. And I don't know whether the game is there or not, but if you could like print the game and everything else and play it, I would highly recommend it, especially if you like the concept of Albion and what I present in my Twilight of Fae kind of campaign, and you might want to bring that color into your game. The maps are interesting, the locations are interesting, and as a game itself, it was really, really fun. And obviously, it inspired me a lot to drive to build a campaign based upon Albion, based upon the Fae and the fairies and all the things that you learn from the Shakespearean stories and things like that. But going to the most important part of this video was Enlightenment. Okay, if you get a double 9 and you take an off season, and when you get that double 9, make a note of what you did. All right, I made a parry. I made a saving throw versus a dragon breath. Whatever happened, make a note, because that's what the Enlightenment's going to be based upon. What happened at that moment that will have changed your character in the future permanently. And your character will now have an ability that will be unique onto him. Again, like, it might not be real unique because eventually other people will have it. Most things are not. But in some cases, we have some that are. We have one person who was fighting a dragon, and the dragon was making a tail sweep. He rolled a double 9, made a note that he defended versus his tail sweep. So he basically wrote up a skill, a talent, an Enlightenment on his off season called Jump Rope. And the idea was any area attack against him, he had advantage in defense against. It was reasonable. So, of course, we agreed with it and went along. On my wizard, I ended up getting an attack by a poison area weapon. And I made a note of it. At the end, I said, well, okay, I have now advantages versus all endurance attacks, gases and poisons. And I thought, wait, that's too much. But now what it is I have advantage against all poison attacks. That worked. Where it's not that likely to happen, but all things, that deal with it. So I think I called it enhanced poison resistance or something as ability. Those things give you advantage. So all the things that are on there, since we're not doing pluses and minuses and things don't have specific words of what they do, they're all a matter of whether they give you an ease advantage or a difficulty disadvantage if it's a negative. Hard to get a negative. We haven't had too many of them. We have a couple that have come up, but we'll explain more of those later. But they're going to be unique to you. So best and easiest thing for me to do is explain some of my characters. I have a defender. Came out, first adventure, I double 9'd on a parry. Made it roll it down. I said, this is awesome. Perfectly. Exactly what I was hoping for my defender. Went back for the off season. Did our off season. Got some new stuff. Basically, I built up my abilities because I wanted my guy to be able to hit more likely and defend better, and just a few things like that. I wasn't worried about getting another class package. I didn't need to go to heavy shield. I was happy with the way the character was playing. So I put the Enlightenment in enhanced parry. So now instead of 1 advantage die in my defense with the parry, I have 2. Well, that seemed really strong because that entitled me in with my taunt package that came in my defender. I felt I was the perfect starting defender character. I could get up against a weak character standing next to me. Monsters come up, one's going to attack me, one's going to attack him, or they realize he's a wizard, they're all going to attack him. I said, no, I taunt. I make my roll to see if I'm successful. And that depends upon the monster. But if you roll sufficiently high enough, you can pretty much taunt anybody. But some creatures like orcs and some of the ones that are not so bright and are kind of if you taunt them, they're likely going to go ahead and attack the defender. Well, that's what I did. I defended, I taunted, defended against, attacked me. Not the wizard. The wizard was able to, prep and draw mana to get their spell more powerful and then torch the orc and finish him off. And that's what I wanted. Well, it was great. So in the second encounter, I'm loving the character, but I got incredibly lucky on the second go around. And I, in one battle, ended up getting 2 enhancements, 2 double 9s. One was for an attack with a broadsword. The other one was for my shield parry again. Well, I'm thinking now this guy's going to be a tremendously good defender. But the problem, of course, is that as he defends, he still only has a 2-die attack. I was really lucky to get a double 9 on 2 dice. It's, 1 in 100. So I now go to off-season, where we're at now, and I'm thinking, what do I want to do? I mean, I really kind of want that second defense, but I thought, no, I don't want that extra die. I don't really need it, and it's really not going to make my character that much better. So that's the point where I put in the idea of giving it an ability to put a negative effect on whoever attacks me. So if I make a parry, I'm going to put a negative on this monster. He may do one of the 3 things. DM's choice. Push back, knock down, or stun. DM's choice. Now the DM can say, now, all too strong. I think I mentioned this to you in the last video, and this monster's too tough. He's going to be ignored. And that's fair. So in some cases, all these enlightenments are not necessarily going to be dominant in all situations. But second time I might make that shield parry, especially maybe like an ogre attacks me, I'll say, wait, superior, Adam. So then it's like, now it's the same, but now it allows it to raise up to even bigger and nastier monsters. So enlightenments kind of grow in power as you're able to play them. And abilities, they do different things. They're not just adding an extra die, because really after you get that 3rd die, you've got a pretty good thing. 3rd to a 4th die is not necessarily going to make you earth-shakingly more powerful. It will make you a little bit more accurate, so that if you got a lot of guys at you, let's assume in a situation you're completely surrounded and they get, 6-on-1, so you're -3 on your defense. It's like, well, for most people, that's usually death. But for a defender with that many dice, he just goes, fine, I'll give up 3 of my defensive dice. I'm still 3 die against everybody. I make a 3-die defense against 6 guys. Maybe somebody hits me, and it's possible. I've done it. But the other thing with Enlightenment I will go ahead and give you is Isobel, my wizard. Now, she has a spell of Ice Blast, which is her offensive spell. She started with it at higher level. It was one of her pickups at Wizard. And she's acquired that up to level 4. 3 dice extra, and her 2 dice. So she has 5 dice. She makes her 5-die roll. She picks the best 2 dice. She's likely going to hit. She's likely going to hit for a very large number. And if it's luckily one of her 3 core dice, she's even likely to get an enhancement, which has happened often with her. Thus she's become that level. Now, the other thing you can do with it, and you'll read that in the match, because you can just say, well, wait, I don't want to just touch. I don't want to get that close to this thing. So I'm going to add range. I give up a die. I add range. I give up a 2nd die to make it a ball. So now I can say, okay, I'm going to drop 2 of my 5 dice and make a 3-die roll at range against these 4 orcs sitting here in about to beat up somebody else, and boom, you fire a little ice ball at them, or ice storm, or however you deem your magic to go. And we're going to be discussing magic much more, because that's the other one where it's really up to the players. What elements you choose, how you vision your spells working, things like that. Because I want people to develop their own magic that does what they do. And almost everybody starts off with some sort of damage dealing spell. The other spell that I have with her is she has a shield spell. So the nice thing about that spell is she'll go up to a warrior. She casts the ice shield on him. She rolls her dice, and for every point she exceeds her roll by, he gains an additional point of armor. It's only for 1 time, but it stays with him until he's hit. So, and the other thing, it will stop glancing blow. So that was the other fact feature in it. So it's a good little item. A lot of people have been utilizing that because it makes it very strong for some of your fighters who are up work. They're fighting a big monster. You walk up, you say, here's an 8-point ice armor and no glancing blow. So you're basically got a good chance of just, sloughing off the attack, or at least greatly minimizing it if you get hit. So that's how the magic works. Now, you can also give them conditions. My wife's wizard is a wind wizard. She throws wind spells. They're interesting and all, but then she had 2 minor spells that come with all the wizards. You get 2 minor spells which have an effect but do no damage. And her case was Word on the Wind, which allowed her to speak, if she makes a roll, to speak with people at an enhanced distance. So people she cannot see, like her allies and friends. And if she ever enlightens that, it could be situations where she could be in another part of the world and be able to talk to people. So it becomes sort of a kind of a clairvoyance or clairaudience type situation with other players. The other thing she had was gust. And she didn't, it was like gust. It was a gust of wind. I said, well, that's actually kind of interesting. Well, the use of it was something, when she explained it in a situation, was there were monsters out there in the overland. We were getting a random encounter. And she goes, well, are we in the woods? And it's like, yeah, we're in the woods. There's, and she goes, there's debris and stuff like leaves and stuff. I said, yeah. She goes, I'm going to cast the gust on them. And it's like, okay. So she casts the gusts and she rolls well. And for every number over the account or our ability to cast it, she was able to sort of blind temporarily, to like throw the dust and leaves into the face of these monsters. And that for 1 round meant that their attack was a disadvantage. What that means is all the players that those monsters attacked, if any, got an advantage on their defense. And so creativity is what I want. You want to design all your characters to be something that you want to see. And that's what we want to do. Now, you don't want to make them omnipotent, and that is always the case. So that's why I say, start with the DM and work with him. Now, whatever he's willing to allow is great, but always what DMs should remember is the worst thing you can do is make one character substantially more powerful than everybody else. Things that they roll legitimately, they're going to get. So people are going to feel like, well, geez, I've played 3 games. I haven't got a single enlightenment, poor as woe is me. I've seen that. And then suddenly in the next game, they get 2. So you can imagine how many rolls are made in an evening. You're usually expecting someone's going to get an enlightenment, sometimes 2. Again, like say, sometimes they're lucky. It's going to be the same person to get 2 or 3. I've seen it a lot. I've seen situations where everyone gets anything, and then I've seen situations where there was half a dozen. It just happens. That's the nature of fate. But I wanted to get on and talk to you about this because I was feeling that people were not completely understanding, which is one of the most important elements of the game. That, and the fact that we obviously, are using different dice for fun, and there aren't really pluses, a lot of pluses and minuses. It isn't like, situational pluses. What's the situation if I jump on this roof, or I do this, or I leap across? It's easy. That's what the extra dice are for. So it's either advantage or disadvantage based upon whether they're doing something that's hard to do or something that's easy to do. So those are the things that make it very strong in the play, but that's also how the tactics get built. So things I want you to see. So I'm hoping this answers a little bit of question. We'll start going into all of this more and more detail. So I wanted to get on here and talk to you about this. Enlightenment is like one of the most exciting and important things in the game, because really what it allows to do is creativity. In fact, last night on our channel, we were all talking, and one of the guys said we need to set up a little thing of all the best enlightenments, so that we could put it up there and everybody could see her, and make it easier for players who may not be able to really say, I kind of really don't know what I want to do. And again, it adds to the community, which is what I love the most about role-playing. The greatest thing about role-playing, especially in the 70s when I played it, was it just built a community. You were at people's houses you didn't know, playing games with people you've never met, and that lasted a couple weeks, and after that, you were friends. And that sense of growth and community is always what I thought has been some of the best strength in role-playing. Because, obviously, whenever you put yourself out in the world, you're always risking something. But I always find that the reward is always worth the risk. So I'm hoping this helped a little bit, at least getting you started. I'm going to be doing videos all the time. Again, like I said, you'll eventually be getting tired of me. But this one came up with a lot of questions, people asking about enlightenment. And I'm like, oops, I better get out there and talk about it a little bit more. And more people have questions. I appreciate the questions. I sure love the feedback. And we're on the move. Anyway, until I have a chance to speak again, fight me, devils, fight, for I hate peace. Everybody have a great weekend. Game on, and hope you get enlightened.